Welcome to the playoff round 3 edition of our weekly prep football video preview. I'm Gazette sports editor Gabe Blissman, joined by Phil Gardner this week. Richard Walker is out of town, but I'm sure he'll be back next week if we have some teams still surviving and playing. Talk about our 3 teams in this area still alive. To start off, Lincolnton 10-3 goes to Mountain Heritage 11-2. Mountain Heritage obviously a offensive team that's put up some points in the playoffs. What's Lincolnton? Obviously, their defense has got to come to play.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest key for Lincolnton this week is that defense. Mountain Heritage just scored 54 and 51 points in their 2 playoff games. Very strong running attack. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards last week, and neither of them were their primary guy.
Wow.
They've got a guy named Casey Randolph, more than 2,500 rushing yards for the year, 34 touchdowns. He's banged up a little bit, hamstring injury. Not sure if he's going to play or not. I think, if he's out of the game, that does give Lincoln an advantage. But still, obviously, these guys have plenty of guys to put in there and to be scoring so many points. Lincoln's defense, very good last week against Carver. Before last week, they had held 4 of their 4 straight opponents to 1 touchdown. Last week, they gave up 2 touchdowns, but they did score on a safety. So the defense has really been a bright spot for Lincoln. They're really going to have to show up this week.
And that, of course, is a 6 seed going to play a 2 seed in the 2 single-A playoffs. In the 2 double-A ranks, East Lincoln 11-2 is the 3 seed, hosting 7 seed Newton Conover 12-1. This rematch from early in the season, 27-19 Newton Conover win early on. 2 usually powerhouses, especially recently, going head-to-head.
I think a lot of people are looking forward to this rematch all season long, kind of like the Forest View South Point. You had a feeling these teams would end up hooking up in the playoffs, and here it is. You got to go back to the last meeting. This was the very first game for both these teams early in the year. Newton Conover survived 5 turnovers, won 27-19. It's funny, I've heard other people say there were 7 turnovers in that game, so I don't know what the real story is, but regardless, they turned the ball over a lot and still won that game. And so I think for that reason, a lot of people will be favoring Newton this time. But I think it's a matter of who has progressed further throughout the season. I think East Lincoln certainly is playing well. They've won 10 games in a row, averaging 39 points per game during that stretch. And the defense, which a lot of times is overlooked, they haven't given up more than 2 touchdowns since that loss to East Gaston way back in their 3rd game. So defense that has come to play as of late. I think it's going to be a great matchup. East Lincoln's defense will be challenged. Newton has a lot of size up front, and they've got a lot of speed. That wingback Octavius Harden is supposed to be a really good player, so I think it could come down to turnovers like it did the first game. I think if East Lincoln can force some turnovers, that will keep them in the game and give them a chance to win.
And obviously in the county, South Point, the last team left of the Gaston County schools, 7 seed in the 3 large A bracket, 11-2 going to Kannapolis Brown, the 3 seed, also 11-2. 2 traditional football schools. This kind of has all the makings of one of those playoff classics, I think.
Yeah, this is one of those matchups you like to see in the 3rd round. 2 schools you see in the playoff brackets every year. A.L. Brown, we see them all the time making deep playoff runs. South Point obviously has done the same thing. 3 times in a row they've been this far in the playoffs, and so obviously they expect to be there. At the same time, though, I think this is a very difficult opponent for them this week. A.L. Brown, according to Coach John Devine at South Point, will have a size advantage. He says his Red Raiders will be outsized by about 20 to 25 pounds up front for South Point. He thinks his offense is going to be challenged this week. A.L. Brown also has not only the size, but a lot of speed on that defense. So Aaron Crumbly has been healthy. The offense has been rolling. They scored 21 points last week in the second half against Forest View. The offense is doing really well for South Point right now, but this could be their biggest challenge of the year. Keep in mind, A.L. Brown has only lost 2 games all year. The first game was in the 2nd week of the season without their quarterback. The other loss was against Concord in the rivalry game, a 3-point game. You know how those rivalry games, they can go
right
anyway. So definitely a tough challenge for South Point this week.
And the series between South Point and Kannapolis are 2-2 last time, with South Point winning in 2002 56-17. So obviously these 2 teams have hooked up before in the playoffs. That'll do it for the 3rd round. As long as teams are playing, we'll keep doing these videos, and we'll hopefully see you next week.